For 4 months straight, my water bill had been going up. It started at around $40, then $80, and has now increased to about $200 per month. I don't want to see what the next one will say. 2 weeks ago, I called the water company to let them know about it once again. There's a lady there who always answers the phone with the fakest "thank you for calling" mini speech ever, and I think she knows who I am. She always tells me that a tech will be coming to my house to check out the water meter and let me know if it's consistent with the records. But nobody ever comes to check. Now, I live with my aging mother, and we're not in the position to be throwing money away. Mom said that someone was stealing the water, but the days where a neighbor could hook up a hose to the side of the house are long gone. But she insisted that I show up in person to get things back in order. So I did. What was left to try? A plumber had already charged us $120 to tell us that our house had no leaks from within our property, that we had to check with the water company itself. Thick glasses and lipstick-stained yellow teeth. That's what Jackie from the "thank you for calling" thing looked like. "Hi, how may I help you?" she said, not even faking a smile this time. She knew who I was, obviously. I doubt anyone else had called the office more than me in the past 2 or 3 months since I started noticing the price hike. "We'll get a tech out there tomorrow. At what time are you available?" I politely said that no techs ever showed up and if I could please speak with the supervisor. Sighing a little bit, she looked at her agenda and called someone named Jonathan. The man was apparently an area supervisor. She handed me the phone. I explained my situation, and then apologetically he said that he would show up within an hour. Even though I was suspicious that he would actually show up, I was glad that I listened to my mom. Something might actually get done this time around. As I was pulling into my driveway, I noticed a big water truck, the one that used to come by with an order to cut off my water for not paying my bill several times. "Is this Martha's residence?" "Yes," I said. "Come on in." He said he needed to check out the water meter and make a visual confirmation of it. He went out to the backyard and looked over the fence to the neighbor's house. "That's not my yard," I said. He chuckled and told me that he knew that, but that my water meter was actually located on the backyard of the house behind us. I'm not sure how that stuff works, and he noticed. So he explained some things about my section of the street and connections that they were made back in the 70s. I still didn't understand, but just needed the water meter checked, and my bill adjusted. "Utilities," he yelled out toward the house as he stretched some type of device. I guess you read these things with radio signals now, or something like that, but you have to get close. "Utilities," he yelled out again, but nobody peeked out the window or anything. I hadn't seen anybody or the lights on in that house for months, if not maybe for even over a year. The last time I talked to them was about 2 years ago when they asked if I wanted to split the costs of a new fence to separate our yards. We still have the old one and it's falling apart, but they installed a nice one right next to ours. Jonathan explained that he couldn't jump the fence because he needed permission from the owner, but that he would visit the house and try to get permission. He said he would leave them a notice if there was no answer and that he would call me later on. Here we go again, I thought. About 20 minutes later, I got a call from him telling me that he couldn't find anybody at that house and that he would have to check next week. I wasn't about to wait a week. Mom was upset over the whole thing and pushed for me to go that evening to try to talk to the neighbor. Maybe they would be home from work. That was her reasoning. So around 8 p.m., I walked around the block to get to their house, trying to spot it by the big tree that they have since I had never seen the neighbor's house from the front. All of the lights were off, but I went for the doorbell. It didn't work. I knocked, and just as I did, a sound startled me. It was a crying whisper. "Help me, please," a fading voice said in the distance. A woman, it sounded like. I knocked again, and I heard the same thing, only louder. "Hello?" I yelled. Silence. I thought about the right thing to do, and after taking a deep breath, I went for the doorknob. It opened easily, and the door swung open slowly toward the inside. "Hello? Help me," Please, I heard from the darkness. I stared inside and tried to make out what was in the living room area. Bare walls, no furniture. Should I step inside? I remember thinking. Please, I heard again. Then chills ran down my back as I contemplated stepping in there. As I leaned my head inside, a loud, "Hey!" sounded from behind me. An old bald man came running up to me. "What do you think you're doing? Maggie, call the cops." I could see the other neighbors stepping out of their homes, the porch lights with the light sensors turning on. I tried to explain myself, but it was no use. There was no way this man was going to listen to me. I'd just explained myself to the police, I thought. I was still thinking about the person inside the house and figured that the police might actually be able to help. They arrived about 10 minutes after that while I just sat on the porch. People were staring at the commotion that this other guy was causing. Great. Another set of red and blue flashing lights arriving in down the block. Even more people outside. The man explained to the police what he saw, and the officer pulled me aside to let me give my side of the story. I told him that there was somebody inside and that she asked for help. The look he gave me was odd, like a mix between confused and amazed. He called 2 other officers over, and one of them with a tablet computer, confirming a time and date with the officer I was talking to. They announced themselves and stepped in. The 2 other officers arrived and also followed. It must have been about an hour later by this time, but a police van arrived with a photographer and another man. They asked me to stay and give my witness account, but I didn't know what else to say except for what happened. The whole street was sealed off by this time as more and more trucks and police detectives arrived. I was allowed to leave, but they didn't tell me anything about what was going on. Their operation went deep into the night. Mom and I knew because of the floodlights they set up in our backyards with these loud generators. At around 2 a.m, through the chatter and the sounds of the motors, I heard a dog barking. The chatter got louder and louder for about half an hour until it all went quiet. I couldn't see much from my window. The next morning, the detectives were still working. A stretcher by the side of the neighbor's house, and right next to it, the distinct image of a black body bag. It was thanks to the 3rd interview with the detectives that I finally got the answer I wanted. The voice I heard, the person asking for help, was dismissed by the interviewers. They explained about the blood-stained bathroom walls they found. They asked me to think back about half a year or so, if I had noticed anything suspicious. We all know how these stories go sometimes, so I made it very clear that all I wanted was to clear up the deal with the water bill. They asked to see my records and then they told me the rest. A hard object had pierced the pipe at the joint that caused the water to leak. A woman had been murdered in the house behind me. They had found her body buried in the backyard. Yes, 10 yards away from my window on the other side of the fence. Her body, curled up next to the garden area with the roses. The area with the water line. The water line that runs to my house. Though my water bill got fixed, I still hear the cries for help. Late into the night. Help me, help me. I don't know who to tell you about the thing I saw. My parents made fun of me the last time I screamed in the middle of the night. Even though I'm sure they care about my safety and everything that parents do, I don't think I can bring this up again because my parents really don't seem to want to talk about this. It started with mild laughter, which I thought was just a part of my dreams until one time I woke up in the middle of the night because I forgot to turn off my notifications. I just kind of laid there on my bed staring at the empty space between the bed and the blanket. It was as clear as you can imagine. The sound of a child laughing. Though it sounded like it came from far away in terms of volume, I knew it was nearby because it was so clear. I froze instantly until I heard it again. Then I screamed my lungs out, And that's when my parents came rushing in, and then they laughed at the situation and asked me to sleep with the light on if I had trouble. I think having the light on would have made me even more paranoid, so I turned it off and ran to my bed and on top of the tangled blanket to make everything worse. I kicked around until I finally fixed it and turned on my phone to watch something on YouTube. I just wanted to fall asleep, hidden in my blanket cocoon. And between my dreams, I could hear the distinct laughter of a kid, though a bit deeper, but still undeniably a child. As the days went on, I started becoming more and more paranoid over the laughter until one day, I watched a video that for some reason got me very motivated to quote-unquote face my fears. I didn't want to live being afraid of something so dumb. I guess I sounded a little overdramatic there, but you get my point. It was 3 a.m. when I woke up. I grabbed my cold phone from the nightstand and flicked on the screen. I heard the laughter again. "All right, Diane, it's time to face your fear," I told myself. All of my friends know that I talk to myself sometimes. I turned on the flashlight on my phone. I lifted up the blanket toward the corner of my room. But there was nothing. I put my head back on the pillow and the light faced down onto the bed when I heard the laughter again. Louder this time. I was scared, but nothing prepared me for what came next. In my attempt to get myself under the blanket again, I grabbed my phone as the light scanned the room for a brief second. Right by the bin where I put my dirty clothes was a girl with an unnaturally wide grin and dark hair staring at me. I screamed again, muffled by my blanket until I couldn't scream anymore and froze in silence. I heard my dad come into the room. He asked from afar if I was okay, but he didn't turn on the lights. "I saw it," I said, as I flashed the light toward my dad and startled him. He was bent over the bin of dirty clothes. He ran toward the light switch and flicked it on, stopping to stare back at the bin of clothes and then back at me. I could tell he was confused as he sat on the edge of my bed, asking what I had seen. He listened to my description in silence until he asked me to get my blanket and go to sleep with my mother instead. Ever since that night, things have quieted down, and I have only heard the laughter a couple of times, these times even quieter. And even though Dad and I haven't talked about the incident, I know what I saw. And he knows what he saw as well. When you think of a dispatch, you might be thinking of something cool like those people who answer 911 calls and send ambulances and police officers. But my job is not like that. In my city, I'm a part of a company that has a 24/7 customer service representative thing for a plumbing service. Some of these things are serious, like leaks and entire apartment floors flooding knee-high, but others are just embarrassing calls from people around town freaking out for them clogging the toilet. The choice of words as it describes what they see is hilarious to listen to. Fortunately, I'm not the one doing the visits. I just take the calls and take care of the billing, payments, and other stuff like that. When I get a call, I can tell them what to do. Things like shut off the water line and tell them that a professional will be with them soon, depending on the urgency of the phone call. The entire night staff is made up of 4 people, and we take turns with the weekends and everything, since they are the busiest. We were discussing the upcoming holiday weekend when suddenly 2 of them started telling me about a strange call they had gotten. A ghost call. They were having their usual burgers from the place across the street, waiting for the phone to ring, literally, when it did. The first one answered it and greeted the potential client. "Blah, blah, blah, how can I help you?" He described what he thought were whispers on the other end of the line, and he put the call on speakerphone. He then heard a grunt and the person hung up. I think it was one of the weirdos that make the calls to food labels and respond to magazine writers over email, with nothing to do in the middle of the night. Someone playing a prank on us? I don't know. We wouldn't get pranks often, and we had clear instructions on how to block those types of callers. That would stop the problem for a little while. Yeah, we were bored at times, so we would get fascinated by things like these. Anything was a good story at 2 or 3 in the morning as you're waiting for the phone to ring. But weekends, like I said, were another story. No, the first guy said, trying to make his story interesting. It happened again. Another guy added, yeah, it was weird. It sounded like a ghost. What the heck does a ghost sound like anyway? I wondered to myself. I simply laughed and reached for the stale French fry that was still on the desk. But then it was my turn to take the weekend calls with another girl, and things would be normal for a little bit. She was usually pretty calm, and she had been working there for a long time, so she knew how to solve some of the bigger stuff. I wouldn't even think of telling her about the strange phone calls the others were talking about. She was one of those people that take their job very seriously. Do you know what I mean? But still, she was cool to work with. But anyway, we both were sitting at our desks while I was filling out some of the end of the month reports and she was working on some other task when my phone rang. I said the welcome message and asked how we could help them. That's when I heard the faint voice of a young child on the other end. Hi, hello, she said. 147 Blooming Lane. I wrote it down automatically, but then hesitated on what to say next. Okay, sorry, so hello, what is wrong? Thank you, the little voice said, and hung up. I kept the phone against my ear for a little bit before Gabby, the coworker, asked if I was all right. I explained to her the phone call, giving her the address and everything, and she wrote it down. I think it was a habit to write down addresses as soon as we heard them. Did you send the van? She asked, knowing very well that I hadn't. She started dialing the driver's phone number, looking to me and asking, but what service do they need? I was just about to answer when she started giving the address to a driver who was near that area, asking him to be there and that she would get back to him with the contact information. Gabby hung up and then looked over to me. I told her it was a little girl who called and that it might have been a prank. She was about to call back the driver when her desk phone started ringing. It was the driver. He was loud and sounded stressed out. Gabby took a few notes and then stood up to call the supervisor. She told me that the driver had been greeted by a child with one of our magnets, the ones that stick on your fridge, and had our phone number. It was held tightly in her hands. She opened the door and pointed toward the stairs. He glanced over to it and rushed up to a woman who had fallen down the stairs and was unconscious. He reached for his phone and called 911 and then ran back to his truck to get the first aid kit. And he got it as he listened for instructions. When he hung up and called the office, he said he was looking for the woman's daughter so that he could report back once he helped out with the incident report. Fortunately, the woman recovered and she gave us a visit once she got the full version of how she was found by the emergency service workers. That's where we got to talking about the strange occurrence. The little girl had gotten our phone number from the magnet that has the information on the For Emergencies Only line. It was made for plumbing emergencies. Her mom had kept a list of numbers and a note with her home address stuck on the refrigerator door. And even though the description of the plumber and the tone of her sound recording matched the description of the woman's daughter, it was tough to accept that as is. You see, the woman's daughter had died several months before.